So there we go. The quarterfinal matchups in the college football playoff are done. We had New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and then New Year's Day +1 matchups. Obviously, one game got delayed due to a terrorist activity. We're going to take a look at all four of those games, kind of give some thoughts, and then take a look at those take a look at those semifinal matchups. We got some really good ones out there. So the first game that we got was Penn State knocking off Boise State. The next one after that was then New Year's Day. We got Texas knocking off Arizona State, which wound up being a thriller for being kind of a little bit of a snooze for most of that game. And then we got Ohio State knocking off Oregon, and that was a snooze fest the entire way through. And then we had Notre Dame knocking off Georgia, with the semifinal matchups being Penn State against Notre Dame and Texas and Ohio State. All right, so let's take a look at that Fiesta Bowl. So, was a pretty good game. Not gonna lie. I kind of felt like Penn State was gonna outmatch Boise State, but still gotta play the game. You never know if one team is actually really good. It's just hard to see it. But in this case, Penn State made a very emphatic point of just making sure Ashton Jeanty did not beat them, and really he didn't. Like he still went for over 100 yards, but it was on 30 carries. It wasn't like he was getting out and making big chunk plays anytime during the game. So the point of the game where you kind of knew it was over basically was the missed field goal in the fourth quarter by Boise State, asking Mr. Madison, quarterback for Boise State, to have to really deliver on the offensive output in the game. You can see he just didn't quite have it. He had some early turnovers. They got behind, and that was kind of the other thing that if you didn't want to see. I kind of mentioned that last time. You don't want to see Penn State get ahead, because then it's gonna be a really tough one to have Boise State make a comeback against that Penn State defense. So that was the main hiccup in the game. Boise State was just kind of outclassed. It is what it is. A lot of people kind of thought that was going to be the case, even though some people thought some of these first round bye games or teams were not good enough, shouldn't have really had those spots. And I don't want to see teams that don't play on conference championship weekend not get a bye, or they get a bye. I don't want to see that. I do not want to see that. So if they do change anything in the college football playoff, and seeding and formatting and stuff like that, I do not want to see someone that almost in the case of Penn State, Penn State almost had the situation where they would have been in the top 4, right? But Ohio State lost to Michigan. So so Ohio State didn't play in the Big Ten championship game, but Penn State did. If Ohio State doesn't lose that game, Penn State would have been in the top 4. And if that would have been the case, like a lot of other people were saying, oh, we should have the top 4 teams, Penn State would have been a top 4 team, they would have got a first round bye. Like a lot of people are wanting to see. That would be stupid, because the first year that situation happens, people are going to say, no, that shouldn't be. You shouldn't get a first round bye if you're not playing in your conference championship game, right? Because then you're off for even longer period of time. You're off for probably literally a whole month. Anyways, so it just came down to Penn State just got the ball, and they just controlled the game. And you see the win probability there. They controlled it. And Boise State was probably the one that was most outclassed in this round. Other than that, it is what it is. The next game up, we had Texas and Arizona State. Now, Texas jumped out to an early lead, and they did not let Arizona State just go up and down the field for most of the game. I say most of the game. Now, my Longhorns survived. If you didn't see this game, it was if you saw the last 8 minutes, that's all you needed to see in this game. It was, my heart was pounding. It was still pounding this morning, a day later. It was crazy. Anyways, Texas, they jumped out early, but it wasn't crazy offensive production. They had 2 great throws in their first series and got a touchdown. A long one, and then a wheel route to a slot receiver into the end zone, touchdown, and then a punt return for a touchdown. They almost had a punt block to start the game against Arizona State, stopping Arizona State on their first possession, but the blocker, like, I don't know if he closed his eyes or what, because he was all over the punter and just completely missed it. Now, I know a lot of people are talking about the targeting call in the fourth quarter. There's 2 potential targeting calls. They reviewed both of them. They were not called targeting calls on the field, but they reviewed both of them. And I thought it was good, no calls, if you're not going to call the first one. I thought the first one, which was against Arizona State, was a more egregious, or not a more egregious. I didn't think it was like horribly egregious, but I thought that was more worthy of a targeting call than the one against Texas defensive back. Name slips my mind at the moment, but I thought that one in the middle field, even though they hit helmet to helmet, it wasn't like he was head hunting. And I think that I heard someone say that it wasn't like he went head hunting. That was the part where I heard someone say, like, that was the point of getting hits to the head out of the game, was the head hunting. And for the most part, that's been done away with. Like, there are going to be there's going to be times where people get hit in the head. It's football. They're wearing helmets. He never lowered his head, lowered the crown. You never saw the crown be the forcible contact. And so when they reviewed the one against Texas, I thought they were actually going to call it targeting, because more often than not, they just look at helmet-to-helmet contact and they just say, oh, that's a flag. So I was really surprised that they picked it up. I didn't think it was, a targeting, like legit targeting, because he caught the ball, he turned his upfield, and it was like on that borderline of, is he a runner? Is he not? And that's like, you say defenseless, and it's like he's in that chest upfield type of mode, or that changing after he's caught the ball. So that was a tough one. I know why people are kind of mad about it, but honestly, I didn't think it was worthy of targeting. I thought the one against Arizona State, which was basically the series before, when Quinn Ewers threw an interception, the other the guy that picked it off caught it over, which was a great pick, caught it over the wide receiver, but the other guy coming across, he lunged up into the head or neck area of the Texas receiver. And I thought that is clearly targeting, because those are the 2 things that they want out of the game, which is lunging up into the head or neck area. So I was surprised that they didn't actually call that one. But I was like, if you're not going to call that one, you shouldn't call the one against Texas. And I was like, okay, if you look at it, fine. But I mean, I get it. It looks like helmet to helmet, but it's not the crown. He kept his head up, He kind of tackled like whole body, but I mean, when you're going face first, you're going to hit face mask, I guess. So it wasn't horrible. But anyways, I was kind of glad that didn't determine the outcome of the game. The player of the game, the MVP player of the game, if you didn't know, was Cam Skattebo, was amazing. He got stronger as the game went on. It was nuts. They turned to him to, be the passing. Like it was crazy. Like he threw for a touchdown. He ran for 2. He had 99 yards receiving. Now there was one on their drive for the second touchdown, I believe, to tie Texas. I believe it was the one to tie Texas. He kind of stopped, put his shoulder into the D-back who was trying to catch up, and the D-back got called for flat pass interference, even though the ball's upfield. And then he stopped, put his shoulder in, and kept running, and then caught the ball, and then the D-back got called for pass interference when he clearly pushed off. And I was like, what is going on here? But they tied it. It went to overtime. Texas has a kicker situation, really bad one. This is something that I kind of mentioned before, that it could be an issue because it was starting to percolate a little bit. It was obvious because Texas could have walked out of that game without it going to overtime, and that was not the case. So it winds up going to overtime, and you can kind of see here into like halfway that fourth quarter, they had it locked up. They were up 16 points, and this is where Texas, they give up that one score to Arizona State. And then for whatever reason, they are driving, and they're up 8 points with about 5 minutes left to go. And for whatever reason, the play call is to throw a pass down the field. That's the interception that Quinn Ewers threw. Kind of talked about that with the, the helmet to helmet or the targeting calls. But that was the play. And I'm like, okay, he's dropping back for a pass. It's got to be like a high percentage. And I see him cock his arm back and throw it like he's throwing it deep. And I'm like, this guy better be wide open. I'm like, what the hell are we doing? And then one of the camera pans over, and I'm like, why are we throwing this? Like, it was absolutely not. And then you see the defensive back make a great interception. I was absolutely flabbergasted because you're up 8 points. You don't need to score. You need to control the game. You need to control the clock. You need to control the ball and just kill the clock. That's all you needed to do. And on first down, they ran the ball, I think, 6-7 yards. So it was 2nd and 4. It was 2nd and 4. And so I was just absolutely flabbergasted that even happened. And I know I'm talking a lot about this game because, I mean, the end of this game was just crazy. And then the overtime, I mean, give Arizona State credit. I mean, the defense played well. Their defense played well. It kept Texas kind of from just running away with it. After Texas got up 14-3 early on and then 17-3 at halftime. Their defense kept Texas from running away with it and gave them an opportunity late because all they needed was 2 possessions. And they got the 2 possessions in the second half of that fourth quarter to get the 16 points they needed to get to overtime. And they almost had it. You can see the win probability here in that first overtime where they had already scored. They were up 7, and they had Texas right after a false start penalty on a 4th and 8. It backed them up to like 4th and 13. And you can see that win probability for Arizona State just absolutely was in their favor. And it's like all they needed was just anything not 14 yards or a touchdown. Quinn Ewers throws an absolute dime on a corner post route into the end zone to Golden, and was a fantastic throw in the moment. Exactly what it needed to be, right over the safety, right over the top of the safety. Was an amazing throw. And for everybody that's been like, oh, Arch, yeah, that's why you have Quinn Ewers in there, because he's been there. He's won those big games like that. He's won at Alabama. And I get it. They struggled this year against Georgia, but that's not just on him. And he's been injured in both of those games. So he's done very well, and he made a great audible for that play. And then obviously got the extra point, tied it, goes to overtime 2, and hits Gunnar Helm, who I'm surprised they didn't use more of, or he didn't have more targets in the game. But Gunnar Helm kind of like goes across the linebackers like he's doing some blocking, and then just turns upfield and goes and gets past the safety, who's probably covering him. As the safety came down, thinking maybe it's a run, Quinn Ewers steps up, open pocket, just drops it right into Gunnar Helm at about the 5 as he just runs into the end zone. Great read, great throw. And then they got to go for 2, second overtime. Throws it in the back right corner of the end zone on a rollout and connects. They were up 8. And then Arizona State got the ball 3, 4, 5 plays into it. Tries to throw left side, basically at the goal line from about the 10, and it's intercepted in the game. It was a fantastic game. My heart was freaking jacked the second half of that fourth quarter. Halfway through that fourth quarter, my heart's freaking jacked. What a game. Arizona State deserved to be in the college football playoff. I walked out of that game. Cam Scattaboo is legit. He was so insurmountable to them being relevant in that game. And he's puking most of the second half. Like every second or third play, he's coming out because I'm curious. I was talking with someone about the game about that, and it's like, did he have a concussion? Because some of the guys that he was taking shots to the head as he's running into the Texas defense. So, kind of curious if he had some concussion symptoms. I don't know if we'll ever hear, if we will. or not, but it was very sus as to why he all of a sudden was puking and having issues staying in the game. He was always just shaking his head. So yeah. Anyways, that dude was a beast. He will do really good in the NFL because he's got that thick body, and yeah, really look forward to see what he does in the next level. Anyways, Texas moves on, survives a scare that shouldn't have been there. Questionable play calling, horrible field goal kicking situation. I would imagine Sark's going to have to address that sometime over the next 6 days. Have no idea if they have a real legitimate backup kicker on the roster, but that was an absolutely awful display of field goal kicking, and that's from the kicker who's #1 field goal kicker in Texas history. But yeah, not good. Next game that we had right after that, actually, I know ESPN was not really planning on Texas game going so long, but Ohio State Oregon game actually started on a different channel, and then it swapped over once the Texas Arizona State game was over. But basically, once this game came over, after the Texas Arizona State, it was already over. It was already over. Jeremiah Smith is my favorite player in college football, and he will be for the next 2 years. He's a true freshman wide receiver for the University of Ohio State. That dude is a baller. He's a big body, fast, agile, strong hands, catches everything. He's a dude. And for the next 16, 17 years, you're going to enjoy watching that dude play football. He is awesome. He will be, he's going to be amazing at the next level. I'm sure some teams are probably already looking at, hey, are we going to be needing a wide receiver in about 2 years? Because that's going to be a dude. A dude. Anyways, there's not really much to say about this game, mostly because, Ohio State, the thing about Ohio State just came out and just said, you know what, Oregon, you got away last time. We're not going to let that happen. We are motivated. We are going to prove to you that you do not belong. And they did. They made Oregon look bad. Bad. B-A-A-A-R, dad. I don't even know what I just said because it was that bad. Will Howard was throwing absolute dimes to all his wide receivers. It's also great when you got Jeremiah Smith just jumping up and just making great catches on sidelines, or basically catching flip passes and then turning upfield for 50 yards. Like it was ridiculous. Oregon was definitely out of game sync, being off as long as they were, and that was probably the main storyline coming out of this week's games, was that the teams on bye all lost. They all lost. And you could definitely see in pretty much all these games, they were a little out of sync. Arizona State was a little out of sync on offense in their game against Texas. Boise State, definitely out of sync. They had a lot of turnovers, fumbles, and that was not normal for them, but it's, part of not getting hit, not being in that game speed, and not used to that flow. Georgia was a little slow on some things. They weren't really in sync. They had a lot of penalties. More on that game here in a sec. But, yeah, you can definitely tell Oregon was not ready for the intensity Ohio State had brought to Tennessee the week before. And a lot of that goes back to what we kind of talked about last week, was that flag planting Michigan did after beating Ohio State. I think that, not Michigan winning. No, it was the flag planting. That was the wake-up moment. That was when Ohio State went out there and they fought Michigan. It wasn't during the game. They were little boys. It was after the game when Michigan was trying to plant the flag, and they became men. They grew up at that moment. They took it to Tennessee. They had something to prove. We're going to prove it to you. That shouldn't have happened. They took it to Tennessee. They took it to Oregon. And that's all you need to know. It was bad. This is how bad it was. They were basically, when did they pass 95%? Or when did they pass like 90%? It was in the beginning part of the second quarter. It was that over. It was never in doubt, really, at all. You were seeing this game and it was just like, my gosh. It was like nothing. Oregon couldn't do anything. Oregon couldn't do a thing. Then the game that just ended just a little bit ago, but delayed today for terrorist activity. Notre Dame Fighting Irish taking it to Georgia. I thought Georgia would get them mostly because I thought the defense would hang, and I thought the run game for Georgia would be able to carry. This Georgia, you know what? I'm not going to say Georgia lost this game. I'm not going to say that. Notre Dame won this game, absolutely, because Georgia's skilled players on offense did not help Gunnar Stockton at all. Fumbles, drop passes at big time moments where you could have got points, you could have got maybe touchdowns instead of field goals. That's what cost Georgia the game. The defense got run down. You can tell by the end of the game they got run down. We don't have the full win percentage up here yet, but yeah, they were getting run down a little bit. Time of possession, a little bit favored Notre Dame, but you got to be very impressed with Riley Leonard. I mean, he only had 90 yards and 1 touchdown, but 80 yards rushing. But when they needed a play, needed a first down, needed anything, the dude got it. And you got to give him credit, man. We need this first down. This first down will help seal the game. He got it. He got it. He would dive right through the line and get it. He would just plow right through the line. Now, is that going to take him to a championship? I don't know, man. 90 passing yards and your quarterback's your leading rusher, and that's under 100 yards. That doesn't really smell like championship offense to me, per se. I'm not also super impressed with their defense still. I think Georgia, more of skill positions, just kind of totally screwed the pooch, especially when you have a backup quarterback in first time starting, Gunnar Stockton. So Notre Dame, I mean, you got to give them kudos. They went in there. They did not let Georgia's skill players on offense beat them. They locked down the running game. Etienne had 11 carries, 38 yards. Let's see, how much did Frazier have? Sorry, I'm going to check out Frazier. So Frazier did a little bit better. He had 4 rushing attempts, 37 yards. So he did a little bit better than Etienne, who had 11 rushes for 38 yards. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, it wasn't impressive at all for a Georgia running attack. I thought they were going to try and lean on heavily, but they couldn't. They just couldn't do anything. They really couldn't. Anyways, Notre Dame Fighting Irish proved me wrong. I thought Georgia would come out a little bit more prepared. I didn't feel like they were not ready. I just feel like they missed their skill players on offense. Definitely missed the opportunities. They definitely missed the opportunities, and maybe some of that is they were not ready. They were just not ready for the game speed. They had a fumble, potentially for the first score inside the Notre Dame 10. Yeah, it was that was a big one. That was a big one. So, you know, whenever you can put up points, especially when you're possibly looking to get a touchdown inside the 10, those are possible touchdown turnovers. So big time win for Notre Dame. And all bye teams lost. So will there be positioning next year going forward? Have to wait and see on that one. Talking about the next week's games. Notre Dame, Penn State will be played first. It will be played on Thursday on ESPN or ESPN Network channel. Notre Dame Fighting Irish against Penn State. Dude, talk about two teams that are just ugly. They both rely on defense. They are not offensive juggernauts by far. I will take Penn State, but we're going to talk about this game a little bit more. I'll take Penn State. And the reason why I'll take Penn State right now, the betting odds already are favoring Notre Dame. I will take Penn State. A big reason why I will take Penn State is because I think their defense is going to be a little bit better than, man, that's tough, dude. That is so tough. I do like Penn State's defense just a little bit better. Notre Dame's defense showed greatness against Georgia, but they knew going into that game against Georgia, Notre Dame just had to make sure they stopped the run. They had to stop the run. They did that. They really did, man. I was really kind of surprised there wasn't more rollout from Gunnar Stockton in Georgia to kind of put more pressure on Notre Dame being more mobile defensively with like run pass options from Gunnar Stockton. And but they didn't. They didn't try to do all that much. But I will I kind of look at this and I say Drew Aller is going to be a much better quarterback. He's not, he's their starter. He's going to be much more prepared. He's much more familiar with the offense. And the other part of it is Warren is an absolute beast who I believe is the best tight end in the country. That dude is a big body. So yeah, that would be, can you stop this guy? And then is Penn State going to be able to take advantage of running the ball? Notre Dame's got a good front seven. I mean, they're not going to be able to run all over Notre Dame at all. I'm not saying that. But Penn State's defense, I see being able to be a lot more able to stop Notre Dame's offense, because Notre Dame doesn't really have that great of an offense, in my opinion. I mean, Riley Leonard made the plays against Georgia when he needed to, but it's not like, I mean, they're just slinging it all over the field, easily converting. Like, you need 3 yards, he's getting 3.5, 4. So I think Riley Leonard's going to have to really, really show some stuff, and that would be stuff he's never shown. So that's just kind of my take. I was wrong about the Notre Dame Georgia game. Will I be wrong about Notre Dame again? That's a great question. I hope not. Honestly, I don't care about this game all that much, but I will take Penn State. This game, what game are they playing? The Cotton Bowl. So it's going to be in Dallas. Yeah, this is some fascinating stuff here. So we got Ohio State Buckeyes against my Texas Longhorns, and honestly, I want to take Ohio State. I do. My thoughts a lot is going to ride heavily on Ohio State, and I really like what Ohio State has shown the past 2 weeks. But the reason I'm going to use the but word, the old BU, the big booty, it has a lot to do with, will Ohio State have the motivation? They had something to prove after Michigan flag planted. They put it on Tennessee. They had something to prove to Oregon, who beat them early in the year. They put it on them. What was the motivation for those 2 games? How does it apply to Texas? If the motivation for the Tennessee game was because of the Michigan flag planting and Oregon was because they lost to Oregon early in the year, those scenarios do not apply to Texas. So how do you get up to that level? Does Ohio State have better weapons than Texas? I'm not going to say they have better weapons. I'm really going to be very interested to see how Jeremiah Smith and that Texas secondary, how that goes down, because I'm going to be really excited to watch Jeremiah Smith play, just not against my Texas Longhorns, because that dude is so good. But Texas Longhorns have a great secondary, and they got some ball hawks back there. So if there's a ball not on point, man, Texas is going to be all over it. So that's kind of some thoughts I got about Ohio State. I'm not a big Will Howard fan. I've said that before. He even in Kansas City, he kind of just chokes it up at some clutch moments, like taking that slide against Oregon, their first loss. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You can't do this right here, right now. He slid and the game was over. So Will Howard, not saying he can't win a close game in the clutch. It's just one of those things that he hasn't really shown too much, especially like big games, big time opponents. So I'll be curious to see how Ohio State comes out in that game. I've been very impressed with the past 2 weeks. A lot of people are. The betting line in this game is already Ohio State favored by 5, but check this out. The computers, analytics favoring Texas, not by much, but basically coin flip game, but a little bit more of a coin flip there on Texas side. So that my biggest question is, what motivated Ohio State the 2 previous games? How does that apply to this next one? Will probably be the biggest determining factor for this game and the outcome. I think Ohio State has a great team. They're obviously highly talented. This is probably going to be the national championship winner, whoever wins this game, assuming no major injuries and stuff like that. But whoever wins this game probably does win the national championship. So everybody will be keenly watching this one. Texas, they still have some banged up offensive linemen. It's obviously a week to get them healthier. be a little bit better. It's going to be a war in the trenches. Both teams have really good offensive defensive lines. Ohio State has a little bit lacking offensive line, so that could definitely, that's going to be where Texas is going to try and beat Ohio State, is just kind of see if they can get pressure on Will Howard and control that run game from Ohio State, because the offensive line for Ohio State is probably not going to be out of the 4 trenching units in this game. Ohio State's offensive line is probably going to be the worst one. So it's going to be a fun one. This is going to be a great one to watch. Really excited to see this one. Really excited to see Jeremiah Smith. And will Ohio State come out as motivated as they've been the 2 previous games? Both of these teams have been playing since the first round. If this game comes down to kickers, I will definitely give the edge all day to Ohio State. I'm not even going to freaking analyze that one. Texas needs to figure that situation out. Like, I would be grilling Bert Auburn all week, in his face, grilling him about kicking, making kicks, because he needs to feel the pressure and just be normalized into pressure moments. I would be grilling him all week, just grilling him as he's kicking, just grilling him. You better make it. If you're not making it, you're doing like 50 push-ups, whatever. Just keep grilling him, because Bert Auburn, my goodness, he was a first-team Big 12 last year as a field goal kicker. That was like one of the least worried spots I came into the season, was the field goal kicker for Texas. He might not even go to the NFL. There's probably NFL teams are probably just like absolutely done with that guy, from costing Texas the SEC championship game, and obviously almost costing Arizona State, but Quinn Ewers with some heroics there in overtime, just absolutely crazy. So yeah, this game's gonna be fun. I'm really looking forward to these 2. Ohio State was, I believe, preseason number 1, and Texas was like 2 or 3. So yeah, there you go. I mean, this is what many people thought it would probably come down to end of the year, was one of these 2 teams. Kind of stinks that we get to see this in a semifinal matchup and not the national championship game, but it is what it is. So it's the way the bracket works, and it's the way these 2 records worked out. Look forward to seeing how these guys play. Anyways, there's definitely things that need to be fixed in the playoff bracket. Talked about that one, but I think for the most part, it's been a lot of fun. Arizona State proved that they were hugely underrated throughout the whole year, and they showed that they had probably one of the best players in college football was Scadaboo, and that was probably one of the biggest storylines coming out of the quarterfinals was Scadaboo. That dude, he did it all. He might have been MVP of the entire quarterfinals, and his team lost. That's how good he was. He was amazing coming out of that game. I was just like, good gosh, dude. He just got stronger. And why coaches talk about complimentary football is because the Texas defense basically just got worn down. You had early quick scores by Texas that put the defense back out onto the field. Let me go back to that game real quick. That put the defense back out on the field against Arizona State. And it's like, yeah, here you go, a 15-minute differential. So you had, your defense is just getting gassed out there. It's like, cool, you're scoring points, but you're wearing down your defense. And that's what winds up happening. Is like, at the end of the game, you were seeing it, like the offensive running game for Arizona State, those lines those holes in the line were getting a little bit wider. People weren't able to get them on the ground as much. And it was, even with him over there puking all the time, it was like he was getting it, man. So yeah, looking forward to seeing this semifinals next week. Stay safe, guys. Take care.